Hello, everybody. This is our second artist in-depth interview here at the Hudson Valley Jam. My co-host, Alex Herrera. And joining us today is our friend, Alan Wentz. Hey, Alan.
Hello, Scott.
Thanks so
Hello,
much.
Alex.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Alan, this is your studio I see in the background, right?
Oh yes, I'm in the cave. The only thing I don't do here is sleep and eat.
Uh-huh. I see a keyboard on a stand.
Yes.
What kind of keyboard is that in the background?
This one?
Uh-huh.
The Matriarch.
Oh, I can't see the colors on it on the screen. Okay. Yes, we share one of those in common, right? Beautiful instrument.
It's wonderful.
Uh-huh. All right, Alan, well, let's get started. When you were a kid growing up, what kind of music did you listen to? Did you listen to your parents' music?
Sure. My parents both played musical instruments. My dad was actually in a band when he was when he was a kid in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Played the accordion.
Okay.
It was all the rage.
Yeah. I studied accordion as a kid.
Oh, there you go.
Uh-huh.
And my dad really he had some pretty cool records. He was really into Dixieland.
Mm-hmm.
So my first exposure to records and stuff was his collection. He had, there were 78s. I mean,
Oh, wow.
all kinds of, Pee Wee Hunt and all these guys, and it was really great music. It was very just tremendous playing.
Uh-huh.
Four guys playing, their Dixieland. I mean, they're like weaving in and out amongst themselves and just terrific stuff. So that's the first music I remember hearing.
When your parents had parties, like family parties, would your father play the accordion and other family members play instruments as well?
To tell you the truth, that my parents never had a lot of parties, and I
Okay.
never really heard my dad play, but my mom also played the accordion.
Ah,
Since my dad was working, to feed
yeah.
us, and she was home, and the old days, moms were home, and she would whip it out, a couple times a week, and play it. The thing weighed more than my car does now. I mean, the case, I don't even know how she moved it, but. And then when we moved out to the burbs from Detroit, she got a Lowry organ.
Oh, wow.
Oh my.
Yeah, a little home jobby with the boom chick rhythm box
Uh-huh.
and all that stuff.
So
So of course,
you grew up in Detroit.
well, I was born in Detroit and spent my first 5 years there.
Okay.
Hardcore inner city ghetto Detroit.
Wow.
And then my father moved us. He got a job at GM,
Mm-hmm.
and then we moved about 20 miles outside the city,
Okay.
where I suspect the analogy would be like Levittown to New York. It was just row houses, and it was just that kind of that suburban sprawl was really kicking in.
Uh-huh.
In fact, where we moved, a quarter mile from our house was just farmland. Now, of course, it's suburbs and strip malls forever.
Right.
I go back there and it's like, hey.
You still have family that lives there?
Yeah. Well, all three of my sisters still live there. My mom's in Florida. My father just passed away from COVID.
I'm
Oh
sorry.
my.
So that kind of sucked. And the worst part, of course, was
Not being able to be there.
not being able to be there. Yeah, they weren't letting you into, the hospital even. So he had to die alone, and that sucked. But so that's where I grew up, and that was my first music. And then I remember the first record I ever wanted.
Uh-huh.
I was really, really little kid. Was a Tutti Frutti by
Wow.
Little Richard.
Wow.
And so that was my first single.
That was like 56, 57, something like that.
Oh yeah, that was back. Yeah, I remember seeing Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Uh-huh.
Just to show you how rough it was where I grew up. My mom and dad had the only TV in the neighborhood.
Wow. And everyone
So
went into your
with
house to watch it.
yeah, a gigantic cabinet with a little screen. That you could,
Yeah. Mhm.
But my mom had all her girlfriends over when Elvis debuted on Ed Sullivan. And I remember being like, roped off in a crib or a playpen or, whatever you stick the little toddlers in.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of my first memories
Uh-huh.
because everyone was real excited about this Elvis Presley character. Of course, I was too young to really,
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
what all the hoopla was. But when I heard Tutti Frutti, I just thought it was funny. A wop, bop, loo, bop, bop, bam, boom. It just cracked me up.
Uh-huh.
I said, I love that sound. I don't know what this guy's talking about, but
Yeah, he was great.
so my mom bought me that record, and of course she knew what it was all about, and she liked it.
She didn't share that
Speaking of songs that make those unaudible or nonsensical lyrics, you ever hear of Purple People Eater?
Absolutely, one-eyed, one-horned,
That's right.
flying,
Yeah. Ooh ee ooh ah ah.
bang tang waddle out bang bang. Yes, I do remember that one. Yeah, yeah. There were some goofy records when we were kids.
Oh yeah.
So, Alan, what was your first musical instrument that you played?
Well, other than commandeering the Lowry organ in the living room,
Uh-huh.
the little plastic recorder at school.
Ah, okay.
So our introduction to music. I know they don't even have a lot of this stuff anymore, but back in the 19th century, they gave us all the little plastic recorders. They were
still did that.
probably $1 a piece. What?
My daughter did that in school last
That
year.
was great.
Yeah.
And then, so we had a semester of that, and then it was band. This was in the 4th grade.
Okay.
So after a semester of everybody playing the recorder, it was like, well, okay, now you're going to choose an instrument to play. What do you want to play? And this is going to the beginning of band.
Mhm.
And well, I thought the saxophone was not only the coolest instrument, but it also was the same bowed fingering as the recorder was.
Huh?
Oh.
So I said, oh, well, I'll that's a no-brainer for me. So I got an alto sax, and I'll be forever grateful to my folks because I know that set my dad back at least one paycheck.
Uh-huh.
Back in those days. So that was great. I still have that instrument somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still play it and just?
Every once in a while, I honestly, it's been 20 years, but I do have this MIDI wind driver
Ah.
Oh, okay.
by Yamaha, again with the bowed fingering.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So I have that over there, and every once in a while I'll pull that out, and that's a really cool instrument because you get a lot of articulation naturally in real time from your breath control, and
Right.
it's got a regular old saxophone clarinet mouthpiece with a reed on it and stuff, and you can do great strings with it because you can do really cool swells with a string patch
Right.
with your breath. So it's a pretty cool little instrument, very underrated. Michael Brecker made it kind of famous, and Tom Scott.
Okay.
And I played it on. Well, before that there was an instrument called a Lyricon, which wasn't
remember
MIDI,
Yeah, I remember that.
but it was the same kind of thing, and it had its own little synthesizer. And I actually played that on a couple tracks on a Roberta Flack soundtrack.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. So I got called simply because I could play, because I had one of those things, and could play it. I think Brecker obviously was booked. I wasn't exactly an A-list session guy, but he was booked, and a friend of mine, George Wadenius, who's just one of the greatest guitar players, he, I guess, recommended me to Roberta Flack, and so I got the gig.
Nice.
That must have been a fun gig.
It was very fun.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the smoke was so thick in the control room. That's the one thing I won't forget. I could barely steer,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't cigarettes.
Uh-huh. All right, listen, before we talk about your later session work, so when you were like in junior high school and high school,
Yeah.
what was your musical life like then?
Oh, well, that was really, I have to say, that was probably the most fun part. The first band I was in,
Uh-huh.
we all saw, the typical story. We all saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan
Uh-huh.
in February of '64. And within 2 or 3 months, I was in my first band.
What instrument did you play in the
I
band?
played my saxophone.
Ah.
So it was a sax, two guitars, and drums. And we played tequila a lot.
Uh-huh.
and and then it was like, okay, well, this, unless we're going to do Dave Clark 5 songs or whatever, we got it. So I talked my dad into get me a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then we had 3 guitars, and then it was like we're looking at each other. It's like, okay, one of us has to play bass, and I was certainly the least accomplished guitarist. I said, well, yeah, I think I can do that. So then I talked my dad into get me I think it was a $46 bass guitar
Uh-huh.
that had a neck about as big as an oak tree. So I got a bass and of course a little amp to go with it. And I caught on to that real fast. So within a week I was able to just, I've always had a good ear. So I could just pick out anything and play it. So.
So did you play at like high school dances and events?
That's
church?
yeah. Those were the high school dances are definitely the first gigs. School dances, and parties, and then state fairs. We entered the Michigan State Fair Battle of the Bands. Remember when there were lots of battles of the bands?
Oh yeah.
And we came in second place, which was pretty cool because we were just kids. I mean, I think maybe we were 16. And coming in second place got us a slot on this big show that they had to sort of close the state fair. And the Lovin' Spoonful were on that show, and Johnny Rivers.
Oh yeah.
I think Johnny Rivers actually was the big name because he had more hits at the time than the Lovin' Spoonful had. But I mean, we got to say hi to him. It was we were just kids, but they were all really nice. They were all really, go get them, hang in there. They were being nice to us. I'm sure we weren't that good, but we held our own pretty well for our age. We were good.
You were
So
on the stage with them. You were there, right?
Yeah.
Well,
And then it was bars. Cause then it was like all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can actually make money doing this. And somebody got us into a bar. We were underage, of course, but we started playing in bars and stuff, which was kind of bad for my school stuff because because playing in a bar then was like 9 to 2. You did like 4 or 5 sets.
Right.
I mean, it was great for your chops. I mean, you got tight when you're playing that much.
yeah.
And but of course I'm still in high school, so
Sleeping on your desk.
oh god. Yeah, my grades, I used to be a really great student and just but I knew what I wanted to do, so I didn't really give a shit or crap. But is this G-rated?
Don't worry about it. I'll edit if necessary.
So maybe
So, let me ask you a question now. What was your? Did you have any formal training as far as your music or anything like that? Or
Yeah, I did. We had really good band teachers where I grew up, who would actually take time with you after school or whatever, and I also took private lessons for a couple of years on the saxophone.
oh, okay, just the saxophone or
On sax, yeah. So I took private lessons on the sax from a trombone player. So it was kind of a unique education.
that's ironic because a trombone player taught me how to read drum music.
There you go. Yeah. I think that's really good to get because you get a really different perspective
Yeah.
with in fact, I know a lot of guitar players, I'm sure you do too, who were drummers.
It's really funny when you were saying about how they would go around to class and they say, what do you want to play in the band?
Yeah.
I wanted to play guitar.
Ah,
So no guitar in the band.
no guitar in the
All
band.
right, drums then.
Yeah, yeah. Drums. I always like drums. Drums are cool, man. Get to make the noise,
Yeah,
set the groove. Drums and bass. I mean,
that's it.
you got to have that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of drums and bass, maybe you could tell us about how you came to be in the Wild Cherry group and the big hit that you had with Play That Funky Music.
Well, I was just kind of drifting around. I'd been in, lots of bands in the Detroit area, and again, trying to make a living at it, you sort of had to go where the money was. And at the time, if you could actually make a pretty decent living being in a show band. I don't know if you
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So so we had like 2 females, which was the first time I was ever in a band with women, a whole different shtick, really schlocky stuff.
Oh, tell me about it.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. But you'd go play for 2 weeks at a Marriott, in Blowhole, Ohio.
I played that place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we've all played it. Beautiful cocktail waitresses, and it had upsides.
Yeah.
And but you could make $500 a week, which back then was
a lot of money.
that was I was making more money than my dad, so that's, and then I just kind of, I can't remember. I think it has something to do with a girl, but I quit this band that was doing all that, and I had saved some money, and I just kind of flitted around for a while, and then I ran out of money, which and then,
as we all do,
and I was somewhere in Ohio, and I was broke. All I had to my name was the clothes on my back and my fretless Precision. And so I said, well, I got to find a band to play with. I got to make some money. And I went to a music store in Youngstown, Ohio, which is where I ended up for some reason that I can't even remember. But I remember it was in Youngstown, and those little tabs, at the music store, that you pull the little phone number off of. And so this guy's said, I'm putting a band together, so call me at blah, blah, blah. So I called him. He said, well, you can come down for an audition. So I said, okay. So I went to this audition, and I'm playing with this guy who was a drummer and a couple guitar players, whatever it was. And I'm playing with these guys. I'm like, yeah, well, this is okay. And he was also auditioning guitar players, turns out. So these 2 guitar players leave, and these other 2 guys come into the room. And it was Bob Parisi and Brian Bassett, who were the guitarists in Wild Cherry. And he, of course, the drummer was putting this band together, was auditioning people for his band, but Bob was actually going around to these things looking for people to pinch for his band. So these guys plugged in, and it was like, holy crap, these guys are good. I mean, they were good guitar players, and both of them. And I'm like, oh, this is good. This could be a good band, So then after we jammed around for a bit, Parisi calls me over and says, listen, I'm actually here to looking for a bass player. So he said, I think you're good. I said, you want to join my band? I'm like, well, what's your band? Wild Cherry, which meant nothing to me.
Of course.
I was like, well, okay, and where are you? I'm in Steubenville, Ohio. Well, Steubenville, Youngstown's kind of in the middle of the state. Steubenville's down, by Pittsburgh. And I'm like, well, okay, but I'm flat broke. I'm staying with this person, but well, you said you can stay in my basement. He said, I've got gigs booked starting in 2 weeks, and you'll get X amount you're going to get salary. You'll be on salary. And I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's really together. If he's not bullshitting me, So you'll be on salary, and I have roadies. I'm like, what? I don't have to schlep my stuff around. So this guy, like, now, of course, I came to find out Wild Cherry had been together for a while prior to this version of the band, and were always a big local band. So I mean, Wild Cherry did very well before we had a hit record. It was a business. Bob was a businessman, very good businessman, first and foremost. So it was, you know, his brother was the road manager who had a big black Lincoln Continental. So we drove to the gigs in the back seat of the Lincoln Continental. We had a road crew. We showed up and plugged in and played. I mean, this was a real step up for me, because I'm used to, you know, hauling my own stuff, of course. And
What kind of gigs did you do initially?
Clubs, bars, and big clubs, big dance clubs.
Mm-hmm.
We'd put 1,000 people in a club on a Wednesday night in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
If you drew a 100-mile radius around Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh, we owned it. Wild Cherry owned it. We were we packed them in all the time. If we played in a small club, people would be standing outside in the streets. So it was a lot of fun. The Steelers were big fans of the band. Franco Harris and Terry Bradshaw would come to see us play and stuff. And
so, can you share with us how Play That Funky Music, White Boy came about, and just your life after that?
Yeah, well, the lyrics of the song really do tell the story. Mm-hmm. It's almost word for word. You know, once I was a boogie singer playing in a rock and roll band, and because disco was starting to catch on in all these dance clubs. Mm-hmm. So what were once these big cavernous rock clubs, all of a sudden they had the Saturday Night Fever lit up dance floor, and disco balls spinning around.
Right.
We're looking at each other, you know, we're playing, you know, Led Zeppelin songs, you know, and it's like, okay, so if we play dun 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 dun, I can't even remember the name of the Zeppelin song, but they had some funk and dance stuff in some of those tracks. Yeah. So we started whittling our repertoire to try to be more danceable. And we learned a bunch. We learned the Hustle and, you know, some Bee Gees songs, and you know, we had to really to keep working.
Right.
And this one guy shouted out from to the drummer as we were taking a break, "You white boys better play some funky music." So Ronnie, the drummer, we went to, you know, we were in a little room behind the thing for our break, and he mentioned that. He goes, yeah, some guy just said, "You white boys better play some funky music." And Bob's eyeballs popped open like a cartoon. You could see, like, you know,
wheels spinning.
The Las Vegas thing spinning with the dollar sign stopping, you know. And he grabbed a napkin off the thing, a cocktail napkin, and started scribbling down words. And the next day we had a practice. I got the song, so we had a practice the next day, and he played us a song, and we all played our parts, and it was like, okay, so this is a cool song. And again, in those days, you didn't do original music. I mean, it was just hard. You know, you played the hits of the day, mm-hmm. because that's what people wanted to hear. If you played an original song, people throw stuff at you.
Yeah.
But we play that funky music, and people went bananas. And we just like all looked at each other like, oh, well, this is different.
How did he teach you guys the tune? How did the creation of the tune come about?
Well, it's pretty simple, you know, dun, 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 you know. Okay, so here you play that, you play this, you know, I want the bass line to be kind of like this, drummer, you know. Uh-huh. It was, I mean, the song kind of plays itself. I mean, you've heard it a million times. Uh-huh. It's, you know, it just all fell into place immediately. You know, we had it down in an hour. We all had our parts that we liked. Mm-hmm. You know, it had a couple of nice key changes.
Mm-hmm.
The pre-chorus thing, I decided to drop out. And at first everyone was looking at me and I was like, just sit tight, So when it goes up to from E to G, the bass falls out.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were dancing and
Yeah.
it revs up the excitement. And then when I come back in, it's like kaboom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that worked out. And again, we played it and everybody just loved it. And they were like, play it again. We played the first time we played it 3 times in a row.
Wow.
Play it again, white boy.
That's right. So
Wow.
we took our own money,
Mm-hmm.
which Bob, like I said, he was running a business. We took our own money. We booked studio time in Cleveland. I think like the next week or something, and we played the song twice. We ran it down while they got levels. The second time was the take, and we overdubbed the vocals. And somebody in the studio was like calling up the Belkin Productions. They're like the big cheese in Cleveland. They did Joe Walsh and the Raspberries and all the Cleveland stuff. And they said, I think there's a band here you might want to hear. And, so one of their guys came down, and so that sort of started the ball rolling. They were a local thing in Cleveland. They had an imprint, a custom imprint with Epic Records. But Bob actually went to New York City to shop it around, and everybody passed on it.
Wow.
So he wanted to get a direct deal with CBS or Atlantic or whoever, but they all passed. Everybody passed. So, we've all heard those stories. I guess everybody passed even on, some of the biggest people ever.
The Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles, right. Everybody passed on those guys. Jeez. not to compare us or anything like that, but so we took the deal with Sweet City, which, wasn't the greatest deal, but it turned out fine in the end because it was so big. So we were based in the Midwest. So I grew up and spent most of my first 25, 26 years in the Midwest. So we moved to New York after all the Wild Cherry stuff. After 3 albums, I left and decided, I'll go to New York City or LA. It was a coin toss, and be a session musician. showing my naivete, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll just go to New York City, and where the best players in the solar system are, walking around looking for work. And so we moved here, and
You say we with your wife, and did you have children at that point?
no kids yet. Yeah, just my wife and myself. And that would have been even more excruciating had we had a kid. But it got pretty dire financially after. But I digress. So we came here, and I was like, okay, what do I do? Who do I know? And I called the only person I actually really knew in New York City was this guy, Bob Blank, who was a terrific, and still is a terrific engineer. And I had met him in like 1971, way before any of that other stuff happened, when I was living in North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains, of all places, doing the hippie life, living in the mountains in a log cabin. Growing up in Detroit, it was like, okay, I got to get out of here because Detroit is. So I went to the opposite to this very beautiful nature-like thing. There's a point to all this. So when I was in North Carolina, I had met this guy who was from Chicago, and he had a mutual friend who worked in New York City. He was a budding engineer. His name was Bob Blank. He engineered that original HBO thing that they would show before every feature movie, dun, 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 and they'd roll through the neighborhood. Anyway, so So that led him off on a great career path. And he opened his own studio down on 23rd Street, about Blank Tapes.
Oh, I know that place.
Sure, it was a big
Yeah,
place. Oh yeah,
My buddy from Switzerland recorded there.
lots of
Yeah.
people did. Yeah, from David Byrne to Blondie would always hang out there. And anyway, yeah, it was a big place. Anyway, so I called Bob, said just to how you doing? Oh, how are you? Blah blah blah, and a couple of days later he called me. He said, "So you play synthesizers?" He said, "Yeah, I do." And you have a Prophet 5. Yeah, having a Prophet 5 when I moved to New York was a big deal because not only could I program synthesizers, which was still kind of a new thing. Playing the keyboards is, that's another talent. But the Prophet, you could store the presets. I don't know if you remember before the Prophet 5, you set up your synthesizer patch, and if the breeze blew in through your room, it was over.
Right.
Unless you wrote every little knob down and every little slider down, you had to start over.
I mean, they had blank templates for the mini Moog. You could make little, right?
Exactly, and it would never be exactly the same.
Right.
Which was fine with me. I actually worked that way again. It's like, okay, I use the sound, I'm going to start over again. I don't, the software presets are nice because it kind of gets you in the right direction. But anyway, I had a Prophet 5, so this was great because I could talk to the producer on the phone and he tell me kind of what he wanted beforehand. So I'd sit at home and work up a couple of banks of patches that I thought might be appropriate for a project. This was very, very helpful at the time. Saved, back in those days when studio time was $250 an hour,
Right.
That was real money.
Yeah.
So any time spent or any time you could save without watching some guy dick around with knobs and stuff for an hour and a half. Oh yeah, okay, there we are. I'm hearing the sound purple. And you know how it was. It was funny. So anyway, so I had a prop in. So Bob said, "Well, come on down. I have a gig for you." And I'm glad he didn't tell me. In that kind of a scene, it's like if you failed, it's over before it starts. But I guess I passed the audition, as it were, and so he started giving me some gigs. And one of the first gigs, I met Jimmy Young, who was definitely an A-list drummer at the time.
Jimmy Young played drums on New York, and Conga. The Conga, right?
Yeah. Oh, he played on. He was one of those guys.
For a reference for everyone.
Oh, right. Yeah, New York is that's enough right there.
New York, Frank Sinatra version.
Yeah, there was no second takes. Sinatra would walk in, and you better be ready. Because he sings at one time. If the band's not there, none of those guys will work again. Anyway, so that's how I got started. So my synthesizer prowess, and I'd play. I usually would play, but sometimes I would just get called as a programmer. Leon, Pendarvis would be the keyboard player. He didn't know jack about synthesizers, but he could sure play.
Yeah.
So I would go in and get him a sound that they wanted, and then he'd play it, which was fine with me. I still got paid, And then Blank Tapes had a lot of interesting stuff. They hooked up with this French label called Z Records. They were really avant-garde, pop punk, weirdo, really odd stuff, which fit me perfectly. And so I played on a lot of those records, and even went to France and did a couple of week tour with one of the bands. I basically played everything on one of their albums, so they kind of needed me. I did all the little sequencer, chugga chugga chugga, stuff, and did all that. And Jimmy went on that too. Jimmy played drums on that. And Norma.
And Norma and David Snyder was on that too, right?
No, David Snyder wasn't on it.
Oh, I thought he was with that.
They had their own. There were three guys in the band, and one of them played guitar. So, well, he barely played guitar, but so anyway, so we kind of made the record for them. It was a real punk kind of thing, but disco, dance, lots of funny sounds, and it was great. It was right up my alley.
Maybe we can let's play one of your tracks now.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about Frodo's Minuet, and this was early '80s.
Frodo's Minuet, I think, was 1980.
Oh wow, okay.
And it's pretty old school. I'm actually playing all the parts by hand into a tape recorder,
Mm-hmm.
with no grids to lock to.
Right.
And but it just came really fast. I think it's a Prophet 5, an ARP 2600, and a Mini Moog.
Wow, nice.
And I got the little it was just an LFO thing to keep time. And all these parts just popped out. I think I knocked it off in an afternoon, and it's really held up well.
Is it an 8-track tape?
Yeah, Tascam 8-track.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the old 80-8.
I still have my 80-8.
Oh, you do?
Uh-huh.
Do you have the DBX for it?
I do.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Does it still work?
I haven't used it in a couple of years, but it's
I've got a closet full of tapes that I would really love to transfer.
All right, well, we'll talk after this.
All right,
so we're going to play Frodo's Minuet. This is Alan Wentz, 1980, here on the Hudson Valley Jam. We're back.
Oh, I get it. Oh, all right. Sounded great.
Who were some of the artists that you backed up in your early session work in New York? I know you worked with Cyndi Lauper for a while, right?
I worked with Cyndi Lauper on Sisters of Avalon, which I think was 1996. It's really, I think, is her best album, and I'm not just saying that because I got to work on it, but I didn't get to play on it. I was a technical advisor.
I see.
I don't know if you know Jeff Daking.
No.
Jeff Daking is a brilliant engineer, really brilliant. He has his own company called Daking Electronics. He makes compressors and limiters and really high-end stuff. He had a studio where Cindy did a lot of her work, and she wanted to do Sisters of Avalon not in a studio. So they rented this mansion in Tuxedo Park,
Wow.
New York.
Yeah.
Very exclusive little gated enclave. I guess this guy was a big cheese publisher. I mean, this place was unbelievable. And they would go to France every summer. So she rented this house, this mansion. And so, and Jeff had to put a team together, and we basically built a recording studio. We had to build a recording studio in this house and then take it apart so they didn't know that anything was ever there when they got back from France. So it was a very interesting technological thing. So I was brought in on that one for my computer knowledge and expertise. So I was making sure all the computer stuff was working and all that, and spent a lot of time making sure, you know, that end was working and backups were being done correctly. But it was really fun because I got to spend a lot of time with Cindy. So we just took to each other, and we just, you know, we hung out a lot and talked and stuff. And it was cool.
I'm gathering it was a digital recording. Early, was it like the Sony tape, the digital tape?
Oh, no. This was on a computer. This was computer. This was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the old Logic.
Oh, yeah.
Before Apple bought it.
Bought it, right.
It was a Mac and a PC program. You could get it on both. And the guy who produced the album, Mark Saunders, was flown in from England to produce the record for her, and that's what he used. But everything went through a big CalRec, CALREC, CalRec recording console, which was a board that Jethro Tull used.
Wow.
So that was in the living room, and that thing took up almost the whole living room. And but it all went through that into the computer. You know, at that time, you know, those converters were horrible. I mean,
yeah,
even 96, they still weren't very good. So there was a lot of data massaging and just trying to get things to sound good. And it ended up sounding very good, actually. The album is wonderful. It's got some great songs on it.
All right. Well, this might be a good time to play the second piece that you brought. Mercy is Calling. Can you tell us a little about this before we listen to it?
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Paul Rogers, who's living in Nashville, not the Bad Company guy, but great singer, good songwriter too. I produced an album for him. I came up with the song. It was really influenced by I was totally addicted to Jagged Little Pill. I mean, to me that was like the album of the 90s. You know, I was already an old guy, relatively speaking, but I just love Jagged Little Pill. I mean, just anyway. So you'll when you hear it, you'll hear, I think, a little bit of what I'm talking about. It is definitely influenced by Alanis Morissette, of all people, and that's what that song's about.
All right, so we're interviewing Alan Wentz here at the Hudson Valley Jam. In-depth interview. We're going to hear Mercy is Calling, one of Alan's compositions from the 90s. And here it comes. We'll be back.
Right.
promise has been made, the fire's still raging. Numbness in the fingers, deafness in the ears, while your beeper's paging.
Then you twist, then you slide, and the wormwood and the gall begin to burn. And you shake, and you sweat. You're at the place that you won't soon forget.
Mercy, have mercy, have mercy on me. Mercy, have mercy, have mercy on me.
And you will try and throw more hands up in the air and you wonder why. And you bleed, you scream, they called you all the kings and queens.
Cool. Okay. Alex, do you have any questions for Alan?
Yeah, when we get to a couple other songs, got some questions about Dexter. Like I really like that song.
Oh, we
Thank
love
you.
that song. We play that on the Hudson Valley Jam all the time.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, that came out great.
Maybe you could talk about that. So that was Legoland Empire.
Yes.
That was the title. It was an EP, what, 4 tracks?
Yeah, there were actually 2 of them, but Guard the Point was the first one with Dexter and 3 other songs.
Ah.
And then we did another one called Solar Particles, which is also good. Not as good as the first one probably, but that first one really came together nicely.
So in that project, you were the producer. And everyone was somewhere else. This was before COVID, and
Oh yeah.
people emailed you their parts. Did you all share in the writing, or someone wrote it and everyone participated? Or how did that work?
Well, I had met Neil Alexander, who plays some keyboards on it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Now he lives in upstate New York, right?
he's in Newburgh.
Newburgh. Okay.
He's the next town over here from where I am, and then this guy Trip Walmsley, who, in my opinion, is maybe the best bass player there is. I mean, this guy is just unbelievably good.
Yeah, that was some good bass playing on that.
Yeah. And he's down in Louisiana,
Okay.
and he was doing some house concerts. I don't know if you're familiar with house concerts, but
Sure.
kind of started in 2010-ish thing, and so people were trying to find other ways of playing. So house concerts kind of started taking off. They're probably going to get big again after this COVID business.
We
But
did
so
house with the Boogie Woogie piano guys, Keys and Rob Rio and myself in my barn. It was really fun. Yeah.
So you're talking obviously limited audience. People bring food.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like just a fun potluck dinner get together thing, and then there's an artist who plays their stuff. But anyway, Trip was up here and actually doing a house concert at Neil's house. Neil would host some of these things, and he hosted a guy from England, another bass player. But anyway, so I met Trip there. And great guy, crazy guy. His mind works like his playing. If you ever listen to his playing, it's pretty out there. So I asked him if you want, then some time had passed. I said, well, listen, I've got these little sketches. I was sketching out these songs with these guys in mind. So I kind of did a little outline of, using electronics and some electronic percussion and loops, and there's really not too many loops on it, but just electronic sounds, if you will.
Did a lot of sequencing on that? Did you do, or was it actual playing?
Mostly playing. Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that certainly sounds like synthesizers, if you will, but it's not the the old it's really not a lot of that. I sent the tracks to Trip, and he put some stuff on it. I basically asked for give me a couple of tracks of, just play what you feel. It's kind of like jazz, just think of it as jazz. Just try to imagine we're in the same room together. Just go for it. Hit record, and I'll worry about the editing later. Mm-hmm. So I got a couple tracks from him, and then this guitar player from San Francisco, who I think I just met as an internet buddy, and he would say, I got to hear some of his stuff online, just liked what he did, and I asked him if he'd be interested. So I would send him the track, and he put his guitar parts on, and then Neil, since he's local. He popped over and did some keyboard parts
at your studio.
Yeah. And then I spent a considerable time, editing it, getting rid of the crap, and tweaking it and getting it into shape. And that's the beauty of computers, as you guys know, is the editing part.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say all you want, vinyl sounds better, blah, 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 whatever. That's personal opinion, I think, now. But for editing's sake, oh my God,
that's where the phrase "we'll fix it in the mix" comes in handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, or even creating it, because there'd be like, well, this would be a great part of the song, but it was like in sections, all going out 12 minutes. So I would find these little gems of parts and pull it all in, and if a note was off, I could kick it over with the computer, and so it just came out wonderfully.
Yeah.
Got a lot of good reviews online for whatever that's worth.
Now, did they send you audio and MIDI files or just audio files?
No, just audio.
Oh, okay.
Just audio. Yeah, it's a guitar player, a bass player, so they don't really deal in the MIDI world. I mean, I'm sure they do in their own studio when they're.
Yeah.
But I just wanted them for their.
For their sound
their-
and audio.
Yeah, for their
Yeah.
playing, of their
Okay.
instruments.
All right, so let's listen to this track. This is Alan Wentz and Legoland Empire, and the title of the track is called Dexter. I guess this was, I see on my notes, it was done around 2010 or so.
That sounds about right.
Okay, we'll be right back, guys. Hope you enjoyed this.
Dexter.
All right.
All right. And we're back.
And that went fast.
So this leads us to what you're doing now. I know you sent us some tracks that we played on our show a while back.
Hmm.
From you sent us some tracks that have been very popular and successful in Taiwan.
Yeah, that was a very happy surprise for me.
Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, this guy I know, do you know what Midem is?
Midem in France, yeah, the music festival, the conference.
It's a conference. Yeah, it's an annual thing in Cannes, in where all the big wigs hobnob and rub elbows and try to make deals. It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah,
I think 20, 30 years at least. This year, obviously, they're not doing it. But so there are people whose job or living is like repping independent artists. So they're like, well, I'm going to Midem, and if you want me to rep you, which is basically getting you in the face of people who might be able to help you.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, I mean, there's such oversaturation with all this stuff now. It's really, everything is just a giant crapshoot. But but you got to pay me. Of course, everything's pay to play. So X amount of money, you pay the guy to represent you. It's cheaper than having a manager, or a lawyer, certainly. And then, so they represent you, and you give them some, some samples. These CDs are, in this last case, flash drives, USB drives, with your MP3s on there. Anyway, so he went to Midem, and he got my stuff in front of some people, and of course I never heard anything from it, and I thought, oh great, there's just a little bit more money down the toilet, but whatever, you gotta try to be in the game, if you will. All of a sudden I got an email from some guy in Taiwan, and it's like there's a little bit of English and a bunch of Taiwanese text, which I'm like, it's like Chinese. I don't know what.
Yeah, characters, Chinese characters. Yeah.
He's asking me for my PayPal account address, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this isn't a scam, right? Yeah, we've got money for you,
Mm-hmm.
and then a bunch of Chinese symbols. What's your address? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. This is like the Nigerian,
There you go.
So, but then I'm looking at it a little more, and it's like, oh wait a minute, I think this might be real. And after all, my PayPal address is just an email address. It's a pretty secure system, PayPal. So I sent the guy, my PayPal email address. And 2 hours later, I got money in my PayPal account. And I'm like, oh, wow. So it was indeed one of these people that Glenn, my friend who repped me, hooked me up with. And this was in 2017, I believe. And every quarter, I get a check from these guys, and I get hundreds of thousands of streams every quarter. They don't buy any music in most of Asia, probably all of Asia. It's been a streaming world for a long time. They don't even buy downloads.
Right.
I mean, they don't want to know about it.
That's what's happening here now too.
That's what's happening here, of course. It's you hook up for the streaming service. You pay your $10 a month, or I think you can do Spotify for free even, right? You just have to listen to commercials.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that in Asia for a while.
Alan, maybe you can tell us about Enceladus.
Well, Enceladus is
This is a recent piece.
I've got an new album will be coming out hopefully within a week or two, which will go to Taiwan first. And in Korea, I just did a deal with Korea, the same kind of thing.
Wow.
So hopefully that'll pan out as well as Taiwan has. I don't know yet. The first thing is going to come out there in August. But this album, Enceladus, I mean, it's a, it's one of the moons of Saturn.
Mhm.
But I like the ring of it, and I saw some pictures of it online from NASA, and it's kind of a beautiful chunk of ice, floating out there. And
Those Hubble space photos are just incredible.
yeah,
Gives you such a different sense of the universe. Just
yeah,
seeing
it's pretty amazing.
majestic images. It's incredible.
I think these were actually flyby photos, though.
Yeah.
From one of the Voyagers, I think.
Wow.
So they're really they're just high res and right in your face and quite beautiful.
All right.
So anyway, but that's just gave me a title and inspired me a little bit. I don't know, and then so I've got 7 or 8 tracks that'll be on this. And as they say, it's the best thing I've done yet, because that's what you say, right?
All right,
Yeah.
so let's play this track, and then we'll come back and follow up. So here's Alan Wentz and Saladas here in the Hudson Valley Jam artist in-depth interview. Okay.
All right.
Get it back.
So, Alan, if someone wanted to find you and listen to your music online, what would be the best way for people to listen to your music?
Well, right now, and what I've been using for the last, bunch of years is Bandcamp.
Okay.
So it's my name, one word, Alan Wentz, at bandcamp.com.
Okay.
So that's where most of my stuff is posted. I've still got lots of stuff that I haven't posted, but I try not to put everything I've done out there.
Yeah, I understand.
A lot of people will do that. They'll just, anything they record, they just, they put it out there. Probably for every 4 or 5 ideas that I get, 1 or 2 of them I actually develop because, man, the way I work, I'm not as prolific as some people probably, but I just get an idea. You know how you just get an idea.
Yeah.
You scribble it down. Maybe it's just even a title. For me, it's usually I'm putzing around with the synthesizers and I come up with a sound that I really like. That inspires me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just do, a couple of minutes of goofing around on it. And then I let it sit for a while. And then I come back a couple months later, and if it still sounds good, then I figure, okay. A lot of times you come back to it and it's like, whoa, was I stoned or drunk or what? I mean, you know how that goes. It seemed like a great idea at the time, but
where did I get 17 fingers from?
Yeah, that's right. So,
well, listen, thank you so much for joining with us today. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great.
You're a great musician. I appreciate, knowing you, and I appreciate you sharing your music with us, letting us play it on the show, and thank you.
The pleasure's mine.
Yeah, thanks,
and
Alan.
likewise. It's wonderful knowing you guys. Scott, you're like the angel for us all here in the Hudson Valley, and so Alex, you're kind of the right-hand man with all of this stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of new. I'm a newbie on this with Scott. Scott's been doing it for a long time, but yeah, but I like the technical end of it, putting it all together and stuff like that. And,
well,
hopefully,
we're grateful. It's just nice to have people out there who know about us,
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us. Alex Herrera, Alan Wentz, myself, Scott Staten. We'll see you next time.
Okie dokie.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Take care.
Wash your hands.